welcome back to me talking about my version of the Marauders in podcast form with Emma. How have you been?
You asked me that like 10 times today. Like,
you haven't answered. You're like, and then that's it. That's what you've been doing.
I don't know, pretty good. There's a lot of preparing for AP tests.
Oh yeah,
which
I'm doing that too.
You're
probably doing it better than I am because I'm still kind of in my little struggle bus here, but you know.
With Gov, I feel like if I don't know it, I can like push my way through something and still like end up okay. With Calc,
oh no. Yeah.
If I usually know what I'm doing, but when I don't, if you don't know what to do, there's really nothing you can do. You just gotta take the derivative and hope it matches up or something.
Here's my thing. Lit is basically just writing essays. In a normal year, it'd be so easy. I would kill it. Without trying, I could probably get a 4 on anything essay based. And then, with trying, I could get a 4 or 5, which, in case you don't know, AP exams 5 is the best one, right? There isn't a 6. Yeah. So it's like, that's what I was kind of going through the class hoping for. And then the past 3 months happened. And then I sat down to write an essay and I'm like, I don't know how to write a sentence. So yeah, I'm fully expecting to like maybe get a 2 on it now, which is like great. But
the thing is, the Calc exam is like so difficult that like anything above a 70 is a perfect score.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what A Push was like too, right?
Yeah.
Yay.
I think I talk about calculus every single episode.
I think you do, and I feel like there's people that like are like it. Like I know we got at least one comment last time that was like, "Thank you for talking about."
My dad probably appreciates it.
Does your dad still listen to everything?
Yeah.
I love that.
Literally half of what I do at school is like I just explain what we're doing in math to other people.
Yeah.
Like that's literally it.
Yeah, and half of what I do in school is try not to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So I'd say we're about equal. All right. Here's the questions. I'm just gonna scroll and then just stop. When did you join the Marauders fandom? So good question.
I mean,
I know I made my TikTok last January. So it's been over a year, and then I think I was kind of liking them.
It was I think summer. Or I guess with COVID everything seemed like summer.
Yeah, so I think I started liking it like November, December of 2020. And then 2021 was when it was like I read all the young dudes in like that January situation. I don't know when I forced you to read all the young dudes.
I read Harry Potter like way back in my day. And then you started like sending me stuff and I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And now here I am.
Yeah, I used to send you a lot of Instagram memes is what this whole thing started off of. A lot of Instagram text posts that were taken from Tumblr and posted on Instagram, and then I would send them to Emma, and then that was kind of just what happened.
You would send me, I've definitely said this before on here, but like I would get sent like one text and I would check it and it would like I would have to like scroll so far.
Right. I used to send you so many headcanons. That was not good. Why do you do this? Why do you put up with this? I've been doing this for over a year. That's not good.
Because when did we film the first one? It was like Memorial Day.
Yeah, we filmed the first one, right as summer was starting. It was kind of like a little summery thing. Remember when we used to post 2 episodes a week?
Well, that was because we didn't have school.
Yeah, it was summer, and also I wasn't dying. So, the 2 things. Let's do another. Boop. Anything on here, you get to choose.
Yes or no?
I'm gonna go ahead and say yes.
No.
Dang it. What Marauder would you want as your best friend? Is it bad that my first thought was like Peter? He seems like a chill dude.
I thought you were gonna be like, he seems like a loyal friend.
That's what I was like, yeah, I'd love to have him as a friend. It's like he literally killed all of his best friends. That's not good. I can't do that.
I would say probably Remus, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because I feel like James and Sirius might be a little too much sometimes. I also...
is a solid bet.
Yeah. He could help me with school stuff.
He could probably help you with calculus.
He could probably help me with calculus. That's kind of a top priority right now in my life.
For friendship. I would say serious answer, probably James. But maybe just because I want to date James, I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure at this point. But yeah, that's probably my answer.
I feel like me and Remus could be bros.
I feel like that's probably true. I feel like Snuffles would like James, and that's honestly pretty important to
Your
me.
dog named after Sirius would
Yeah.
like James.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Look at her. You tell me James wouldn't be friends with this dog. Okay, let's abruptly sashay into this one. All right. Yeah. Okay, so a little refresher for last time. It was that Remus was like, I want to tell Lily I'm a werewolf, you know? Do you remember
I just
that?
remember them ice skating.
Yeah, and then the ice skating, and also they all have detention.
Oh. Haha.
Let's get ready for this week of detention. Alright, so, scene 1. It is the next day. So it's the next day, the boys are in the common room, waiting for everybody to arrive and, like, come down to breakfast with them, and, you know, things are chill, and they're trying to figure out how Remus is going to tell Lily, because, like, Dumbledore has his notification system for when the boys
He uses his phone as he, like, turn notifications on.
No, but okay, I haven't actually thought about this, because I'm like, Dumbledore would have to know. But, like, how is he gonna, is it just, like, it pops into his head, like, I
like,
know that
dang.
they've told? Or is it, like Fox tells him? I don't know.
Actually, all of the teachers at Hogwarts are secretly animagi, and they're all just lurking about. They hear everything.
Okay, so that's how
Yes.
they find out. But no, so they're trying to figure out how to tell Lily that Remus is a werewolf without, like, it getting out, you know? But you know, they're talking about it, and James is like, okay, so does that mean that you're gonna tell, like, everybody? And Remus is like, no, I mean, like, I like everybody else, but, like, me and Lily are the ones who are besties, so, like, that's gonna be that. So I'm just planning on telling Lily right now.
I imagine, like, Sirius, like, pulls out, like, his list, like, from when they were planning to tell Peters, and then they're like, okay, if this happens, this happens, this happens, and everyone else is like, it's okay, man.
It's okay, that we already figured out that didn't work. We gotta do something else.
This is how Sirius deals with every situation.
Oh my gosh. Alright. So then they're interrupted from their scheming by someone up in the girls' wing is just, like, yelling obscenities. Obscenities, right?
I don't know.
Anyway, bad words. From upstairs, and then just, like, they hear somebody just coming down the stairs, like, very quickly, and they're like, oh shoot, who is it? And it's Mary. And they're like, okay, Mary, and she's, like,
good?
barely, like, got her socks on, she's, like, holding her shoes, her hair's a mess, and she's, like, barely in her uniform, and, like, the other people who are, like, you know, barely downstairs because it's a Sunday morning, are just kind of like,
What?
Hi? And she, like, makes a beeline straight for the boys, and it just, like, and plops down on an armchair in front of them, putting on her shoes, like, angrily, and they're like, hey, so, are you, like, good? Mary, like, what's up? And she just looks up at them, and she's like, I think Marlene's gonna need to get another bed. And they're like, oh, shoot. So she broke things off with Julie and the gang. And she's like, and they're like, oh, shoot. And they're like, okay. And so then she freaking conjures a brush and starts, like, aggressively fixing her hair. And James is like, you know, if you want to go up to, like, our dorm and, like, get ready up there, like, that's fine. Like, don't worry. And she's like, no. And they're like, okay. She's like, I want them to come downstairs and see me look good and presentable and unbothered, okay? I can't just leave and go get ready. I have to be here when they come down. And Peter's like, I do not understand girls.
She has to be ready.
I know, and Sirius is like, I understand. And he like starts helping her. But Sirius was like, so I'm assuming it didn't go great. And she's like, what do you mean? We all braided each other's hair and sang Kumbaya. What do you mean?
She's like, can't you tell by how my hair is braided?
And Rose was like, okay, sorry, we just thought you were still kind of figuring out how you wanted to tell them. And she's like, yeah, but then this morning they all ambushed me, and we're like, where were you last night? Because I was hanging out with you guys. And so then I told them I was hanging out with you guys, and I decided to tell them everything. And I told them I didn't believe a thing that they had been saying, and I didn't want to be around them anymore, and that they had been treating Lily like crap for no reason, and I was done with it. And they're like, okay, so how did they react?
And she's like, did you hear?
And she's like, it doesn't matter. It's fine. And they're all like, I feel like it matters a lot, actually. And she's like, well, they were just mad. Like, obviously, that's it. And they're like, okay, but, like, what did they say? Like, what's the tea, girl? And she's just like, she just looks, she sighs, and she's like, okay, will you guys, like, promise not to tell Lily? And the boys are like, oh, we've never been asked this before. And they're looking around, and they're like, do we keep secrets from Lily, like, for her own good? Like, are we at that place now? Like, I don't know if that's, like, a thing. Because they've never considered lying to Lily before.
Except for the fact that Remus is literally like a werewolf.
Well,
and they
yeah,
can
but
turn
like
into animals.
But like,
Is it dead?
Yeah. Should I just plug the battery in? And just like, yeah, we're just gonna do that. This episode is already a mess, and it's fine. It's fine. And it's fine. But she's like, okay. She's like, will you guys not tell Lily? And they're like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know. They're like, it kind of depends on what you're about to say right now. And she's like, okay. When I said that they were BS for, like, hating her when I'm also a Muggle-born, and Margaret said, I don't like Margaret.
I genuinely have never heard of Margaret.
Okay, it doesn't matter. She said, we all know there's a difference from being Muggle-born like you and Muggle-born like her. And the others are like, what does that mean? And she's like, I don't know! She's like, it's just, then after that, the whole thing turned into like, are you gonna, are you really gonna choose to be with Lily and not us? And they didn't really seem to care about the Muggle-born stuff, and it was like just about Lily, and the whole thing was just like choosing to be friends with her or us, and I was like, I'm just choosing to not be friends with you guys. And then Eden was like, see, even Mary doesn't really like her, and it was like this whole thing, and then it just and she's like going on, and then Sirius was like, shut up, because Lily's coming downstairs, and then they're all just like super casually,
like, hey,
we're like, hey, what's up, girl? And so they all kind of silently decide to not tell Lily, because what the heck. So Lily comes downstairs, and she sees Mary's with the others, and she's like, and Mary's like, yeah, can I join y'all for breakfast? And Lily's like, hugs her, and is like, oh my gosh, yes, I can't believe you did it. So on the way there, Mary, like, explains, like, what happened, but leaving out the whole section that she just explained. And the boys are like, yep, this is exactly what she told us, nothing different. But at one point, Mary,
like, friends with Julie.
Yeah,
but this is
it. And then at one point, Mary's like, okay, Julie didn't say anything at all the whole time. She sat in the corner and said nothing. And Lily's like, is that good? And she's like, I don't know, but she just didn't say anything. And they're like, okay. So, possible redemption for Julie there. Anyway, I looked up at the camera, and there's just nothing there at this point. It's just the tripod. So, at breakfast, Lily felt like deja vu from, like, her first breakfast of the year with the guys, where, like, people are kind of looking at them, and, like, it's, like, a whole big thing. Only this time, like, Marlene is going through, like, all the ways that they can get Mary's stuff, like, out of the room. And Mary's like, I can just walk in there, like, when they're just in classes. Like, it's not going to be a big deal. And Marlene's like, no, we got to sneak in. We got to do, like, a whole
has a full plan.
operation. And she's like, Marlene's planning a heist.
Yeah.
To get her stuff back. So that's kind of fun and funky. Snuffles, are you going to just leave us alone?
She's like, no.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, near the end of breakfast, McGonagall comes up to the group and she's like, you 5 that I have to deal with. She's like, I have your detention assignments for tonight. She's like, you're going to be in my office right after dinner to just like organize files manually, no magic. But the boys are really angry because they don't like organizing things. But Lily's like, oh yeah, this is fine. I can organize things. Like, alphabetize? I got this. And so Lily's like, okay, so, like, you know, how long is it gonna take? And they're like, I don't know. We're usually kind of there, like, just until, like, midnight. And Mary looks at them and she's like, till midnight? And the boys are like, yeah, you're not in detention. And she's like, all week? And they're like, yeah. And Mary's like, Lily's gonna die. And they're like, what do you mean? And Lily's like, oh my gosh, Mary, like, literally shut up. Like, it's gonna be fine. Literally shut up. What the heck? Literally. And the boys are like, why would this be an issue? And Mary's like, listen, Lily can't function without, like, a full 8.5 hours of sleep every night. I want to preface this by saying I wrote this episode well before my sleep issues started happening. I wrote this plot line. So before somebody comes for me for writing about my own life, I wrote this literally like a year ago. So Mary's like, she literally can't function without like a full 8 hours of sleep every night. And Lily's like, oh my gosh, I can. You're so dramatic. It's fine. It's like whatever. And the guys are like, please do tell. And Marlene is like, no, yeah, for real. She goes to bed really early. I've noticed this, and I've never said anything about it. You go to sleep so early. And then the girls start, like, roasting Lily's sleep schedule, and she's like, what is happening?
She's like, sorry, I actually sleep.
So they're roasting Lily's sleep schedule, and she's like, okay, dang, just because I like, to get a regular amount of sleep, like, I don't see what's so wrong about that. And James, who, like, you know, wakes up early for all of his runs, is like, yeah, I don't see what's wrong with going to bed early. Like, it just means that you get to go for a better run.
And they're like, Lily doesn't go on runs at 4 a.m., James.
But he's like, there's nothing wrong with it. And Mary's like, yes, it's your choice. She goes insane if she gets, like, under 7 hours of sleep. And Lily's like, literally calm down. Maybe when I was, like, 12. But, like, I'm 16 now. It's gonna be fine. And she's like, hello, like, we were up past midnight, like, last night, and it was fine. Do you think I'm insane now? Like, I'm fine. And Mary's like, so she already has, like, a bad head start, is what I'm hearing. She's like,
it's only getting worse from here.
It's only gonna get worse, and it's gonna go downhill real fast. Anyway, so it's the last class of the day. Lily's in potions, and, James, Sirius, and Remus are all in Transfiguration. And they're currently working on, like, conjuring, like, entirely new living creatures. Which is, it's not really individual work at this point because of what level they're at. So it's, like, small group work, and it's, like, partner work or whatever. So, typically, how things have been going down in the past couple of classes is Remus and Sirius work together, and then James is just there because there's, like, you know, it's supposed to be partner work. And then it's
James.
just, and James is just kind of walking around, and James, like, is just, like, occasionally pairing up with somebody who, like, actually needs help, but most of the time just, like, talking to McGonagall, like, all throughout the class.
James is literally the student teacher in this class.
Yeah, he, like, figured out how to do this in, like, 4th year, so
Yeah.
he's, like, just, you know, waltzing around. But today, it's different. Because Mary is also in this class, but has previously been paired up with, like, people in this group.
Oh my god,
and so Mary walks in, and James is
Mary.
like, Mary! It's so good to
love
see you.
Mary.
Like, as soon as she walks in, and she's, like, bright red, and she's like, you better shut up. And he's like, oh my gosh, Mary, I'm so glad I have a partner. And she's like, you have no idea how to be subtle. And Remus is like, oh, we do. It's just James chooses to never be subtle, ever. And so class started. And, you know, it's typical now. It's just, like, more practicing. And they're trying to create, like, larger, complex birds, like chickens and stuff. and James and Mary are working together. And she's, like, not bad at it. But, like,
James is just insanely good.
James just did it, like, first try. And he's like, yeah. So he's, like, helping her a little bit. And eventually they just all get to a point where it's just like repetition. They all know how to do it. And then James begins to get bored. And that's never good, especially in class. And James is like, do you think I could get away with transfiguring Amber is one of the girls. He's like, you think I could get away with transfiguring Amber's book bag into a niffler and then pretending it was an accident? And she's like, no, I don't think you can do that.
Mary's like, you think McGonagall is gonna believe you just accidentally happened to transform some random book bag into just a fully magical creature. She's like, go for it, James.
She's like, well, we're supposed to be making birds. Like, I don't think that's really...
He's like, it's a common mistake. Gosh.
And so... Mary's like, and also, I don't want you doing that. Like, I'm not trying to cause any more problems than we already have. And James just sighs, and he's like, what is it with girls and not wanting to actively fight each other? I don't get it. This is what happens when I get in a fight. I want to fight, and y'all just don't want to. And Remus is like, you seem to only include, like, girls in statements like that, acting as if I haven't been actively against us fighting since I was 11. And James is like, you just pretend to, you know? You secretly want to fight. And by now, Sirius is also bored. And he's, like, completely unrelated to what James was just talking about. Which one of those girls said that Lily was, like, and they're like, and Remus is like, oh my gosh, stop. And Sirius is like, I'm just wondering which I should target first is all, you know. And Mary's like, don't you all have detention tonight anyway? And
James with is like, Professor McGonagall,
James is like,
who is teaching
how
this
much
class?
more trouble are we gonna get in? Like, obviously. So anyway, so they stop. But then James is kind of like, okay, like, did they really say that she was, like, a bad kind of Muggle-born? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, jerks. And then Mary's like, yeah, but I don't understand why they would think that, like, I'm different from her. Like, how can you be a different Muggle-born? You either have Muggle parents or you don't. That's literally the only requirement. And Sirius is like, well, it's not, like, as simple as that. And they, like, look at him and they're like, serious? And he's like, okay, I don't think that, obviously. I should clarify. I'm just, it's like, she's like, well, then do tell me, Sirius, what else is required to be a hated Muggle-born? He's like, calm down. He's like, okay, but, like, in reality, like, just like Muggles. And she's like, I do like Muggles. He's like, not how Lily likes Muggles. What does that mean? Exactly. And
this is such, like, a pure blood topic.
Yes,
like,
and James and Remus are just, like, looking at him, and he's like, okay, I'm sorry. And James is like, okay, I'm so sorry. What exactly do you mean by that? Because it sounds like you're accusing Mary of just not being, like, a good enough Muggle-born. And he's like, listen, I'm not saying anything. I just know that that's what they're thinking. And she's like, how? And he's like, okay, listen. You know how much Lily talks about, like, Muggle music and Muggle TV shows and about her family's, like, shop and stuff. And she's like, okay, I'm sorry I'm not obsessed with Queen like you are, Sirius, but I don't think it makes me a bad Muggle. He's like, I'm not saying anything to you, Mary. I'm just explaining it. And she's like, do you really think that just because, like, she talks about that stuff more than I do, then they think I'm, like, less Muggle-born? And Sirius is like, I'm just saying that at my parents' house and around people who think like my parents, most of the time, they're less concerned with, like, the actual blood status of a person and more how they behave in respect to Muggles. Like, if someone's half-blood but never talks about their Muggle family, it's very different from someone who, like, has Muggles in their family but is, like, besties with them. You know? Mm-hmm. And she's like, I talk about my family. He's like, Mary, I'm so sorry, but the only thing I know about your family is how much you hate your dad. And she's like, my dad's the worst. He's like, I know your dad's the worst.
And she's like, your dad is coincidentally a Muggle.
Yeah. He's like, I just know, but if the only thing people hear about you talking about Muggles is how much you hate your dad, I mean, and she's like, okay, that's stupid. And he's like, it's the truth. And then Mary kind of stops and she's like, Lily loves her dad. She talks about him, like, all the time. And Sirius is like, mm-hmm. And then they finally, you know, kind of get Sirius's point. But it's less about, like, Mary disliking her family and more about, like, Lily just, like, loving hers. Lily never shuts up about her family, except for Petunia, but we don't have to get into that. And then Mary realizes something. She's like, oh my gosh, Lily's parents invited us all over to her house over the summer. And it was like this big thing for them, for these girls for some reason. I didn't get why they were so against it. And they're all just like kind of sitting there in silence, like, oh, that's it. She's like, this stupid idea that muggles and wizards should never get along. I hate it, blah, blah, blah. And then she's just kind of like quiet for a little bit. And then she's like, Sirius, how many queen shirts do you own? And Sirius is like, I think 4 or 5. And she's like, can I borrow a few? And Sirius is like, is your master plan just to become as muggle as you can possibly be? She's like, yes, can I borrow some? And
James is like, we can transfigure some. We got this, Mary.
Like, we got this. No, but then the only thing about this is that Remus is, like, not okay with it. He's like, you can't take his queen shirt. He's, like, trying to be casual about it.
Mary's like, why? And he's like,
you can't. You can't do that. Like, I don't know. Like, just borrow some of Lily's shirts. And it's, like, this whole thing where Sirius does not care, but Remus is like, I kind of like those shirts. Please don't take them. And, like, eventually they're, like, huddled together thinking of ways, and then of ways for her to become more muggle. And then Minnie comes over and is like, she's like, guys, I have not seen any of you guys do any sort of wand work in, like, 40 minutes. And, like,
I imagine James just makes, like, 50 chickens, like, pop up.
She's like, and of all things, I don't need a sixth one of you here. This is not what I need. And James is like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm just not allowed to have any friends now. Is that what I'm hearing? I just have to waste away having no female friends whatsoever, being single my entire life? And she just looks at him and says, at least then I would never have to deal with your future children. And yeah, that's the end of the scene. All right. Detention that night. It's not nearly as bad as Lily thought it would be because they're literally just organizing. Like, that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
She's just more annoyed with having to put up with James and Sirius at 11 p.m., who only seem to gain energy at that point. She and Peter and Remus are, like, the only ones actually doing work for, like, a good amount of the time, and James and Sirius are providing entertainment for the group, which was not fun.
This is why I couldn't choose one of them to be my best friend at the start.
Anyway, but yeah, it's mostly just, like, mindless work. You know, Lily doesn't really mind, but the rest of the Marauders are like, this is the worst. This is torture. I hate it. It's, you know, it's getting late, and however much she didn't want to admit it, Lily was completely exhausted by, like, 11 p.m., and then didn't tell them that they were done until, like, 12:30. And then after that, there's still homework to be done. And so then when they arrived in the common room, the boys just, like, started to do homework. And, like, they didn't try to, like, put it off or whatever. And Peter's like, no, yeah, trust me, like, it gets worse if you, like, put it off, like, throughout the week. And she's like, how are you guys, like, responsible? Like, what's going on? But anyway, so, like, then Lily has to do her homework. And she just, like, falls asleep, like, immediately after getting into bed. Like, barely even, like, realizing that there's, like, an 8th bed in the room. And somehow, like, they're all squished together. And, like, all of Mary's stuff is in there, and we don't know how Marlene got it. Anyway.
It was the heist.
That's
what we're really missing out on.
So now it's Tuesday. Mm-hmm. At breakfast, Lily just looked like she had just not woken up yet. And James was like,
poor Lily.
All right, Evans. And she just, like, stares at her eggs for, like, a full 2 minutes without moving. And she's like, eventually she's like, after people ask, she's like, yeah, I'm fine. And Mary's like, you tired? And she's like, no. And Mary's like, all right. So then this morning they all have Defense Against the Dark Arts, which simultaneously brought the memory of the existence of Professor Sterling back into everyone's mind. And they're like, oh yeah, what the heck happened with the ice rink? So Marlene had suggested over the weekend that they just like go and ask him what's up. So they did. So Sterling walks in and they just like look at everybody. And holding like a steady face, and every kid there is like desperately like they just had the feeling that even though like there's just a complete stone face on Professor Sterling's face, they just know that they're trying not to laugh like so hard. And they're just like, how may I help you? And James is like, why did you help us on Friday? Just immediately. And Sterling's like, help you? I have no idea how you guys managed to create that ice rink. And Peter's like, nah. Hold up. You said that you knew we were up to something, and you kept students away. You helped. And Sterling's like, I like to think that I was just doing that simply for the benefit of the other students who were just trying to get to the entrance hall. And, you know, what if
Peter's like, no.
And, you know, but I didn't do it to help you, you know. Everyone knows you guys don't need any help to pull something like that off. And they're just like standing there looking at this. Oh my gosh. And they all just kind of sit there, and they had just expected Professor Sterling to just like deny everything. But here they were. They're just like sitting on their desk, just looking at
him. You got questions about the homework?
And Lily's like, okay, if you knew we were up to something that would get us detention, why wouldn't you just, like, give us detention in the first place? And they're like, Miss Evans, are you asking why I decided to be nice? And she's like, yes, I am asking. And they're like, well, have you ever considered that I might just, like, be nice? And Remus is like, no, it was more than nice. It's your job. I know Dumbledore might be a little out there, but, like, he still expects his staff to, like, keep us kids in line and, like, pay attention to the rules. You literally just went against your boss. You just ignored us. Why would you do that? And they're like,
do you want me to give you a detention?
They're like, I thought you would have figured that out by now. And the others are just like, no, nobody figured it out. And Sterling's like, no one has held this job for longer than a year in, like, the past 20 years. It's March. I'm not gonna be here much longer.
Like, we got 2 months. What else do you guys want to do?
They're like, I thought you guys are funny, and I have to admit, I was a little curious. And the others are like, whoa. And James is like, I'm sorry. You thought we were funny? Lily's like, James is like, shut up. And Sterling's like, yes, I did. Most of the professors do. And James is like, I freaking knew it. I knew it.
He's like, what does McGonagall say?
And Remus is just like, you're kidding, right? And Sterling's like, I'm absolutely not. I mean, you annoy us like a lot. You make their jobs way harder. But
you're also kind of funny.
But it's kind of funny. And Lily's still thinking about what they said. She's like, you really don't expect to, like, stay past this year? You think that the curse is, like, real? And Sterling's like, I'm not planning on leaving. But guys, like, no one just keeps their job here, you know? No one has kept this
They're
job.
like, Lily, you don't believe in a curse in this magic school?
And they're just like, I would just be shocked if something completely out of the blue didn't prevent me from staying next year. They're like, Dumbledore would never fire me, so, like, why am I following the rules, you know? Like, what's gonna happen? And James is like, I knew I liked you. You're my favorite, bruh. So Sterling's like, okay, any other questions for me? Don't you guys, like, have classes to get to or something? And Remus is like, don't you have a class to teach or something?
He's like, I don't know, man.
Literally. But they're about to, like, get up and leave, and then Peter just has to ask. He's like, okay, how did you just show up? And they're like, what do you mean? He's like, I mean, on Friday, you just kind of showed up. And Sterling's like, ever heard of, like, an invisibility cloak? And Peter's like, yeah, but you weren't using one. And Sterling's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, because you still would have shown up on the... And the guys are like, shut up! Don't say it! And Peter's like... I wasn't gonna say anything. You just... And Sterling's like, I wouldn't have shown up on what? And they're like, nothing. nothing at all. And so
He's like,
they just
I can still give you detention, guys.
And so then they just kind of sit in silence. And finally, Sterling goes, you know, you guys aren't the only ones who have found passages during their time at Hogwarts. And they're like,
they're like, there's more?
Sterling is like, you know, tell you what. If you guys come back at some point and tell me how you can locate people, even when they have invisibility cloaks, I'll tell you about the passages I know about. And they're all like, and then we kind of move on to detention here. Yeah, I needed a teacher at Hogwarts who at some point gave up, because that just would never happen, where they like keep it together through the end of the year, knowing that they're never gonna have this job again, you know? Anyway. So anyway, detention that night. They're cleaning several like cases of weird magical objects that can't be cleaned with magic, so you know, it's more just like random things. But they're talking about Sterling, so it's like keeping them entertained. It's much more enjoyable. And then by the end of the night, they've decided that they will tell Sterling about the map eventually, but there's still a chance that like they would think that the map is dangerous, obviously, because it kind of is. And then like Sterling would eventually like tell the other professors, so they're like, we gotta wait till the end of the year. And then Lily that night doing homework, it's like agony. She's like so on edge. They're more on edge than the boys had ever seen her. Remus like offers to finish an essay for her, and she yelled at him for trying to help her cheat. And she's like, do you think I'm dumb? Is that what you think of me, Remus? You just think I'm so dumb that I can't even write my own essay? And he's like, whoa. And then she just starts crying.
Imagine he's like, I already wrote James and Peter's.
Literally. She just starts crying, and she's like, I can't believe Remus just suddenly hates me. And the boys are like, okay.
They're like, should we grab Mary?
Yeah, so at this point, they're just like, okay, so Mary was right. Something's definitely going on. It's literally only Tuesday. But now it's Wednesday. All right.
Is she alive?
Wednesday is when Lily really starts going downhill. We're not gonna lie. She starts snapping at like everyone and everything. On Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, she has like no breaks in her schedules, which just has made things much, much worse. In her first class of the day, which is Charms, which was usually her like best and like favorite subject, she almost had a breakdown because she didn't get the new term right on the first try. In arithmetic, she didn't speak to Remus at all because of the essay thing last night. She's still
oh my gosh.
In herbology, she's so groggy that she forgot that there's like venomous tentacula like in the room with them, and like got grabbed by one, and then she like yelled so loudly that Professor Sprout asked her to leave and collect herself before returning. She's like, just go take a deep breath out in the hallway, and then she's like screaming out in the hallway.
Why is that literally what the art hallway is?
When she does return, she's like still like cursing, but like under her breath this time, so it's like good. And Peter is like, he was gonna ask at one point if she like needed help, but she just like gave him a look, and he just like left the table entirely. He just got up and left and was like okay. Right. So yeah, so then her last class of the day is again potions, and the boys like warn like Dorcas and Amory, who are like in the class with her, that Lily was like in a mood. And then like when they come back, the girls are like grinning, and they're just like, she didn't do anything to us, but we're for sure we are.
They're for sure.
They're for sure. They definitely saw Lily just like curse Snape's potion to go bad just because it looked like he was gonna finish before she was. And she's like, no. Anyway, when Lily's in potions and the others are in Transfiguration, they're like becoming like pretty close with Mary. They've all gotten the hang of like the new spell at this point, and they've like begun a game of what's essentially like Russian roulette, but the loser gets like shocked by James's wand. But the real game is just trying to make sure that Minerva didn't catch them doing this. So it was pretty interesting. And so then the boys are eventually like, okay, so like Lily's going insane. You were right. And she's like, I know I was right. And they're like, okay, but like, how do we fix it? Is there any hope? And she's like, no, there's nothing to do. You just gotta let her sleep or like leave her alone. I don't think anything else works. And Remus is like, okay, hypothetically, how do you think she would respond if she got like new information right about now? And she's like, okay, what kind of new information? He's like, I don't know. New. And she's like, well, if it's like exciting, it might be like, she might get like excited and kind of drag her out of this thing for a bit. But like, if it's bad information, don't tell her. Don't bring it up. This is not the time. And she's like, one time when she didn't sleep enough, I told her that I had broken a bracelet. It was my own bracelet. And she yelled at me about it. And it was one of the scariest moments of my life. And Remus is like, okay. He just kind of looks at the others and he's like, I guess internally, he doesn't say this in front of Mary, but he's like, I'm guessing now is not the best time to tell her I'm a werewolf.
No, he just says that, and Mary's like, yeah, okay.
Mary's like, haha.
Mary's like, that's probably for the best.
That's a funny joke.
No, she's like, yeah, don't tell her right now.
Oh my gosh. So they're like, okay, maybe we should just like leave her alone. And Mary's like, yeah, honestly, at this point, like, don't be mean, but like, she's barely functioning. Just kind of let her be. And so detention that night is more cleaning, and about halfway through, she yells at them and tells them that they were all stupid little boys with no sense of chivalry. And then went down and sat in a corner facing away from them, just cleaning on her own.
They're like, Lily, this is the detention you volunteered to do with us.
Literally. And Remus is just like, honestly, like, at least she hasn't said anything, like, rude to us. Like, she hasn't, like, actually insulted us. That's kind of nice. And he's like, honestly, like, better than you guys. But anyway, so that night while they're doing work, she falls asleep at the table, and then the boys like silently debate like, what do we do? Do we just do her work, or do we just like let her be? We can't wake her up, obviously, and they're just like silently bickering. So they eventually decided that yes, they would do her work, even though she was probably going to be really mad when they woke up. She was. So the next day, now it's Thursday. Next day's breakfast is when Lily began what Mary has labeled stage 3 of the sleep deprivation, which is basically the same as the other two, except Lily just swears like a sailor the entire time without stopping. And Sirius would be like, listen, Lily, you have a break today with us while Peter's in care of magical creatures. Just like take a nap, please. Like, I'll do anything. Just please take a nap. And then she launches into this whole, like, curse-ridden rant about how she's like, I said I wanted the detention. Did you forget? I'm the reason this whole thing started, not you. I'm perfectly freaking capable of doing whatever I want, including staying awake. And they're like, okay. So anyway, things are bad. But at this point, she's, like, no longer...
I want to know how they didn't, like, notice this happening before with Lily.
Because she's been good at getting enough sleep.
If Mary has each of the steps labeled and, like, written out...
I want to imagine... I think this has happened maybe a total of 3 or 4 times ever. It's just Mary just really likes to label things.
She sees Sirius list one day and she's like...
and then like, they get together. Oh my gosh. No, but at this point she's no longer like attacking people directly. She's just attacking everything. Her toast this morning was not toast enough at breakfast, and so she just like swore about that, and like the toast had just like personally done a wrong to her, you know? She ran into Snape in the hall on the way back from breakfast and then just started swearing at him as if he had personally caused her toast to not be toast enough. And he was, like, actually shocked. Like, actually a little, like, taken aback. And for the first time in his life, he, like, kind of looks to the boys behind her for, like, some sort of, like, help or answers or something. And James just looks at him and is like, you heard her. Like, I don't know.
He's like, why wasn't it toast enough? You tell me.
And Lily just looks at him and says, you know exactly what you did to Snape. And he just, like, leaves. Yeah, at this point, there's no logic to anything that Lily is doing. It's just emotion, and the emotion is spite, and that's it. During their free period, James and Sirius and Remus encourage Lily to, like, take a nap again, and she's like, have any of you ever taken a nap because of detention? Ever? Have any of you ever taken a nap? I don't think so. And Remus is like, I've taken a nap. It's like, whatever. But they just like are about to answer, oh yeah, we take naps all the time. I don't know.
Imagine Peter just like immediately like falls asleep on the spot. He's like,
and Lily's like, if you lie to me, I will know. And they're like, shoot, well, we can't lie. And Remus is like, listen, well, no, but you have to understand, we've been doing this since we were like 11. And she's like, has Peter, he's in Care of Magical Creatures right now. She's like, has Peter ever taken a nap? Has he just, no, right? And they're like, no. She's like, if you guys don't need a nap, then neither do I. And they're like, okay, listen, Lily, we will take a nap if that's what you want. Like, that's not a big deal. And then she starts crying again. And they're just like, okay, we're going to drop it. And she tells them to leave, so then obviously they have to leave. And Remus and Sirius are like, oh yeah, we're going to go chill on our own for a little bit. You feel us, James? And he's like, yeah, whatever. So then he's just like, well, crap, what am I supposed to do? So now I get a little James moment away from the madness that is Lily spiraling. But yeah, so he ends up in the library alone, which is like unheard of for him because he's only ever there to like do things with other people. He's never just gone to the library. Like, I don't think ever, you know? But he's just chilling. He's just sitting in a chair pretending to read, you know, as he does. When a certain Hufflepuff, her name is Venus Burke, she walks up to him and just starts talking. And she's like, okay, I've never seen you around here, like, just chilling in the library. Like, what's going on here?
She's like, something suspicious is going on.
And she's like, are you planning something? Like, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, I just low-key got kicked out of the Gryffindor common room. And she's like, who kicked you out of the Gryffindor common room? He's like, Lily Evans. And she's like, okay, yeah, is she, like, good? Because, like, I don't know.
No, she's like, she's on stage 3, isn't she?
No, she's like, she's been really weird recently, and if I'm being honest, I'm pretty sure like everyone's concerned. She's like, one of the 4th years in Hufflepuff said that she asked her for help with charms, and she just looked at the kid and said, I'm effing useless at charms, and then burst into tears and ran away. And James was like, yeah. So about that. So he just, like, starts explaining the entire situation, and it's, like, really therapeutic because it's, like, a new person. And she's like, wow, yeah, that's insane. And he's like, I know, it's insane. And he's like, I feel like I've been lost my entire life because apparently, like, the Gryffindor girls know about this, and this is, like, a common thing, and this is insane, right? This is crazy. Anyway, so he's like, I've never met anyone more stubborn in my entire life, and I've literally met me before. Like, this is insane. You know, so, and before they know it, they've talked through, like, basically the entire class period. And James is like, okay, hold up. This girl's a little bit epic. Not gonna lie. So let's pull away for a second. Let's get inside James's head for a second here. So James has, like, been thrilled that, like, Remus and Sirius are together and everything. Like, don't get me wrong. But he's also, he's just, like, he's glad that, you know, they're doing their whole thing, but he's like, but at the same time, they're always going off together now. And now he's stuck with Peter and Lily, which is, like, again, fine. But, like...
Not when Lily's insane.
Not when Lily's insane. And then also, what if James wanted a girlfriend? Because he's like, they're so happy. I want to be happy. Yeah. But whenever he's thought about it, he's just only been able to think about Lily. And he's like, okay, she's not interested in me. Like, and he's, like, basically over her, like, as over her as he will ever get. But he just hadn't, like, been able to, like, date, really, mostly because he's only hanging around with them. But now he's sitting here with this random girl, and they've just, like, been talking for, like, over an hour nonstop, and she's pretty, and James is like, when can I see you again? And, like, and then they planned up to meet that Saturday, and that's how James got a date with this whole mess. Anyway, so later that night, the boys are trying to talk to McGonagall, and they're like, listen, Lily's gone insane. Can she please just not do detention anymore? Can you just tell her that she's done? And they, like, explain the whole situation to her, and she's like, oh yeah, no, she's had more than enough punishment. This is fine. So she goes up to Lily, and she's like, hey, congratulations, your detention's over. And Lily's like, no, it's not. And she's like, no, it is. It's over. She's like, no, I have to do the whole thing. And she's like, Lily, I'm literally telling you, you don't have to do it anymore. And she's like, I said that I would do this detention, and I'm gonna do a week's worth of detention, okay? So then that's, like, a whole thing. So then McGonagall's like, okay, fine, I'll give you guys, like, lines or something really boring, so, like, she'll have to go to sleep. But the entire time, somehow Lily manages to just stay awake out of pure spite. She's just, like, staring at her paper, like, angrily writing everything. The boys are amazed. For, like, 3 hours straight, they're all, like, sitting in silence trying to, like, get her to go to sleep by, like, being really quiet, and it's just not working. And then they do all their homework in silence, too, and she just stays awake the entire time, and they're like, what is phase 3? What's going on? And Remus is like, they're like, okay, something's got to give at some point, and Remus is like, she literally has a full schedule again tomorrow. Like, she's not going to stop, but thank goodness it's just one more day of this. Maybe they can do it. So it's Friday. The next day, they began to seriously fear for Lily's safety. She has, like, these huge circles under her face. Like, they don't even know how they got that bad. They're like, it's literally been, like, 7 days. Like, what is going on? Not even 7. It's been, like, 5. And they're like, Lily, just go to Madame Pomfrey. She will understand. Just get some rest. And of course, this just made her more angry and want to stay up even more. Gosh, and she's, like, literally consuming, like, all of the coffee at their table and is, like, still barely functioning through it. Through some, like, who knows how, she made it through all of her classes without any major issues. She no longer has the energy to yell at everyone. She's just, like, going, you know? There's no emotion. There's no anything. And so Mary is like, we've entered stage 4. I've never seen stage 4 before, but this is for sure stage 4. And she's like, it's almost impressive. I've never seen her get this far before. And Remus is like, don't you ever let her hear you say that ever in your life. She will take it as a compliment.
Oh my gosh.
Remus isn't doing well himself either. Like, you know, he's a werewolf. And Sunday is like, you know, and Sunday's another full moon, which is another reason that, like, their detention is only going through Friday night anyway, because usually it would go for, like, a full week, but obviously McGonagall's not going to make him do it. So he's like, honestly, this might be the only time I'm grateful for a transformation, because I won't have to deal with sleep-deprived Lily anymore after this. So finally they get to the last detention. McGonagall is determined that they only have to stay until 10 because, truthfully, she doesn't want to be blamed for what is going on anymore. And then they finally go back and, you know, they come back from the detention and they're like, all right, good night, Lily. And then she just sits at the table in the common room and they're like, what? And she's like, I don't know. I'm just thinking I might want to get ahead on some homework before the weekend. And they're like, Lily, for the love of all that is good, go to sleep. And she just has the audacity to look at them in the face and say, I'm not tired. And they're like, oh my gosh. And she just keeps on going. There's still a good amount of people in the common room at this point because, you know, it's not very late and everyone's, like, so upset with her. And Remus is like, I give up, good night. And he's the first one off. And then the others try and convince her, Peter, and then Sirius, and then James, and she just keeps on insisting she's just not tired. She's like, I don't know, maybe I'll just, you know, have a butterbeer, stay awake for a little bit longer, I don't know. So anyway, so then Mary's last. And she's like, listen, you literally added another stage to the process. That's not good. You whatever you wanted, you did it, you know? And she's like, I'm not tired, Mary. And she's like, fine. So anyway, so eventually people figured out that she isn't going to bed unless everyone else did first. So the entire common room was then cleared by 11 p.m. on a Friday night. They got everybody to go to sleep by 11 p.m. on a Friday. But then it's Saturday. So James wakes up for his early morning run, you know, excited that this week is finally over. Excited he has like a date that afternoon. It's a good day. It's a good day for James. He's having a good time. You know, and he's like, maybe after this we'll finally be able to start like talking about, you know, great. Okay, this is fine. He's like, maybe we'll be able to start talking to Lily about like Remus being a werewolf and all that fun stuff. Like that's gonna be fun, you know? And then he walks downstairs to find the most horrifying sight in the world, which is Lily awake. And
Lily,
he's like,
go to bed.
And he just like, then it's his turn to start just like swearing. He's like, oh my gosh, Lily, what are you doing awake? And she's like, it's like horror movie. She's sitting there with coffee and she just goes, I don't know. I just felt like watching the sunrise this morning. And he's like, oh my gosh. And he just like gives up. He's like, what do you want from this, Lily? What is it? Do you just want chaos? Is that it? Do you just want to just annoy us as much as we used to annoy you, to slowly drive us insane, to show Mary that you don't actually forgive her? What is it, Lily? Because whatever it is, you done it. You won. I don't care. She's like, I'm fine. He's like, you're not fine. People that are fine don't play these mind games, Lily. He's broken. He's gone.
Oh my gosh.
She's like, I can stay awake as long as any of you, and he just like sits back in the chair and he's
like, we wait
face.
to sleep.
She's like, he's like, half of him hoped that he's just like still dreaming, and the other half just wants to burst out laughing because what is even going on at this point? She spent her entire life up until this year pretending that she's like a girl that would never like engage in something remotely petty, that she's like above all of this, and here she is like being the most absolutely pointlessly competitive person he's ever met in his life. And he's like, if you'll sleep, I'll give you a trophy if that's what you want. And she goes, your Quidditch one? And he's like, no, not my Quidditch one. And she goes, oh, not interested then. And he just looks at her and he's like, I'm going for my run. She's like, okay, have fun. And when he comes back, she's still awake, obviously. And then he goes up and he like showers, and when he comes down from his shower, she's still awake. So they got breakfast together because they're only two people awake on a Saturday morning at this hour. And he's like, you know, most people sleep in on the weekends. And she's like, well, it's a good thing we're not most people, Potter, you know?
Like, it's not a good thing.
When the others get up at like 10:45, they're all angry too. They're like, you've done more than prove your point. This is not what we need. And she's like, listen, I've recently been promised a Quidditch trophy if I stay awake. And James is like, I did not promise you my Quidditch trophy. I'm not giving you a trophy. Yeah, so everybody starts yelling at James to give her his trophy if it'll mean she goes to sleep. But there's just things that James can't do, you know?
That's the line, and he's not gonna cross it.
So at like 12:30, James like is like mumbling under his breath that he's like, you're gonna ruin my date. And she's like, what date? He's like, what? And she's like, what date? He's like, I don't have a date. She said, you said I would ruin your date. Who are you going on a date with? And he's like, if you'll go to sleep, I'll let you know. And then Lily just like goes quiet again. So at about 2:30 p.m., they're all in the boys' dorm lounging about. Lily and Remus chilling on like James's bed, which is the only one that like is actually gets made, because James, it's part of his morning routine. He goes for a run, he makes his bed, you know, that's what he does.
Oh, James.
Peter and James are like playing chess, and Sirius is attempting to get their record player to work again because somebody broke it during the ice skating thing. So it's like, it's quiet, it's peaceful, and that is where Lily finally falls asleep. And Remus is the first to notice, and he's like, frantically waving his arms around trying to get everybody else's attention. And Peter does not understand the subtlety, and he's like, what? From across the room. And Remus is like, just wants to just throw something at him. But then they all get it. And they're all just like silent. And they're all, like, frozen, too. And Sirius is like, nobody move. And Peter is like, Peter is like, okay, I'm not staying here forever. And Remus is like, if that's what it takes, you're gonna stay there forever, okay? And so they all stayed there for literally in their positions, not talking, not doing anything for like a solid 10 minutes, just to make sure that she was like really asleep. And then like one by one, they all like stealthily try and leave, like as quiet as they possibly could. And I didn't write this part, but for the rest of the day, they keep everything in the common room, like, dead silent. Like, they're like, nobody is gonna say anything that could possibly wake her up. But then as the night goes on, they discover that she's sleeping so soundly that they can do anything, and she's not gonna wake up! Because she's finally, like, she's done it. So, eventually, Lily wakes up, and it's dark. And she, like, looks around, and there's just, like, she realizes it's, like, 2 a.m. She finally finds the clock, and it's, like, 2 a.m. She's slept for 12 hours straight. And then she looks around. She is not in her own bed. She's still in James's bed from earlier. Just, like, still just laying on top of it. And then she looks around. She sees a note next on James's bedside table with her name on it. And so she opens it. It says, Evans, first of all, we just want to say that we're thrilled that you're finally sleeping. You've been truly terrible.
She has been.
They said, we're never letting you get a detention again. You're also not allowed to feel bad about sleeping on my bed on my bed all night. You know as well as I do that Sirius and Remus did not mind sharing. But honestly, we would have all slept on the floor if it meant that you would get some sleep for more than 3 hours. Also, you're probably really uncomfortable seeing as you fell asleep in all of your muggle clothes. So I've gotten out some of my pajamas so that you can borrow if you like. She looks over and they're like neatly folded in a little
it's
pile.
James.
It's
You know they are.
And he's like, now go back to sleep. You need it. From James. P.S. I've hidden my Quidditch trophy just in case you'll never even find it. So don't even try. And that's the end of the episode. Yeah, I can't believe that I came up with that entire idea before I had my sleep issues.
You jinxed yourself.
I really did. I wrote that. I tried to look. I wrote it almost a year ago. I think I probably sent you at least some portion of that.
I feel like I should go home and like hide all my soccer trophies, or like the next time you're at my house, they're just all gonna like
oh my gosh,
disappear.
This is not how I currently am, but it is how I used to be a little bit. 'Cause I always like I had a really good sleep schedule for a long time. And so whenever it would get messed up, it was like weird. You remember when we used to like we used to go to an overnight camp together, and I would go to sleep at like 9:30, you know? And everybody's like awake until like 2 a.m. Yeah. And I'm just like, I could not, and I did that because I wanted to enjoy the stuff that they had during the day, and I can't function unless I was getting that amount of sleep at night. So it's like I knew that I had to go to sleep earlier, else I just wasn't going to get to do anything fun the next day. But I was definitely bullied for that a little bit.
Yeah.
By you.
Oh, yeah, by me. I was going to say, I definitely did.
Oh, yeah, everybody did. Everybody was like, what are you doing? But it was just how I functioned. So that's based off of me, but it's just, obviously I went pretty overboard, but it's just funny that now I'm having all of these sleeping issues. Yeah. So, yeah, I think, you know,
James is pretty great.
James is pretty great.
Kind of the star of that episode.
He really was. I just needed that cute little note at the end is what I live for. But yeah, so that whole stuff, there's whole sections of this that I wrote like a year ago, and that note was one of it. Besides the Quidditch trophy thing, I was considering having it changed from just her falling asleep to him having to give her his Quidditch trophy, but then I decided that James would never do that. He would never. But maybe he would. If it starts to happen again, you know he's going to. All right. Yeah, so this episode, I know it's just going to have a lot of technical difficulties, but you know what? At least it's here, and at least it wasn't another, like, month and a half.
Hopefully all of it's here.
Yeah. Yeah, do you have anything else to add? Any thoughts, feelings, and opinions on the episode? Thoughts on Mary?
I love Mary. I feel like James needs another friend who is relatively sane. so we can do Transfiguration in peace.
You think James needs a sane friend?
Yes.
Okay.
He could benefit from that.
I that is kind of true. Maybe he would benefit from it. Yeah, I like the sanity that Mary brings to the gang. You know, it's nice. It's a good thing to have.
Especially when Lily just like completely just jumped off the deep end.
Yeah, I think that's the only time. We only have
this
we only
was
have
like
4 more
this was like their
episodes in the
real
season.
like bonding moment where they need Mary now.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah, so we only have 4 more episodes, I think. Unless I think of another plot point that I need to include. I still don't know what's gonna happen in episode 19 though. I have episode 17, and 18 planned out. Episode
and then
19 is just
blank.
empty. And then I obviously have ideas for the season finale. But anyway, but I don't know. James' next little arc is gonna be interesting.
That interesting?
Because what's gonna happen with him and Venus?
Oh, I'm excited for that.
You gotta know. You gotta know what type of gal she's gonna be. You know. Anyway. It'll be interesting. And how is Lily gonna react to that? You never know.
Hopefully she just sleeps.
Hopefully Lily never wakes up. Anyway. All right. Let's end this out. All right. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Mostly listening today. Sorry for Snuffles being a booty face basically the entire time. That was not very kind of her. I'll be having words with her afterwards. Thank you so much to Benji Wilson for the music and Ren the Metamorph Modus for the cover art. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye.
Bye.